Dr. Stiglitz, it's great to see you again. And thank you very much for joining us at this very late hour in New York. Now we are bracing for greater geopolitical tensions and economic challenges as we anticipate Trump 2.0 in a couple of months. So at this critical time, we are very fortunate to have Dr. Stiglitz as our special keynote speaker today. I say this because his truly remarkable achievements in research and policy throughout his life have made him to be the most respected advocate of sustainable growth and responsible globalization. Dr. Joe Stiglitz is the recipient of the Nobel Prize in Economic Science in 2001 and former chief economist and senior vice president of the World Bank. He also served as the chairman of the US President Bill Clinton's Council of Economic Advisors. He has been Columbia University's university professor, a title reserved for the highest economic rank at Columbia. I'm always privileged and honored to have participated in a small way in his great efforts during that time. Without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Stiglitz for his special address today. Joe?
Well, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. And I really do wish I could have been there with you in person. But as you know, this has been a very busy time in the United States with the elections and so much going on. So next time, hopefully I can.
Sure.
The subject of my talk, centering around the tidal shifts in globalization, couldn't be more appropriate. We've just gone through an American election in which Donald Trump was the victor. That comes on top of the pandemic, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the slaughter in Gaza and Lebanon, and the inability of the international community to do anything about it. Not surprisingly, questions are being raised about democracy, about the rule of law, both domestically and internationally, and about multilateralism. But I should probably preface these remarks by saying my concerns, my deepest concerns are about the future of democracy and the future of multilateralism. Let me begin in the United States. It is still the largest economy. What happens in the United States will have global consequences. I want to divide my remarks about the future, the immediate and long-term future, in two parts. The first focuses on what happens if Trump goes through with his promises, if he's successful in convincing Congress to adopt them, if they passed legal muster. And the second part will look more carefully about what might actually happen. We have to go back and remember that in his first term, much of what he promised, much of what he aspired to do, he failed at. So beginning with what he has promised, what he has articulated during the campaign, what that he wants to do, it's very clear that it would be very bad for the US economy, and I think very bad for the international economy. It will have repercussions in almost every aspect of what is going on. So let me sort of try to be a little bit systematic about this. The economic issue that probably bothered voters the most has been inflation. The result of supply chain interruptions associated with the COVID-19, the pandemic, exacerbated then by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. These supply side interruptions led in turn to demand shifts, and all of this led to inflation of the kind that we had not seen in almost half a century. I believe that Trump's policies, if they were implemented, risk leading to another bout of inflation, particularly traumatic, as I said, because we're just getting over the current one. The rate of inflation came down remarkably rapidly. Inflation is down to the levels that most central bankers feel very comfortable with. But just as we've gotten inflation under control, Trump promises to get it up again. There are several of his policies that are highly inflationary. Perhaps the most concern are his high tariffs, 100% on goods from China. And America, like much of the world, depends very heavily on China for apparel, for appliances, for our computers, for our iPhones, for our telephones, for so much. And tariffs of that magnitude would be devastating. Of course, some companies would be able to shift their production from China to other countries, but that would be disruptive and costly. And it's hard to see how that would not lead to inflation. The reason countries have chosen to produce in China is because it is the place where production occurs at the least cost. That's the nature of capitalism. So by imposing these large tariffs, which are just another name for taxes on imports, it would be inflationary. In fact, most economists think it's a particularly inflationary form of taxation. Moreover, it's a form of taxation that hurts those at the middle and the bottom more than any other group. They depend more on these kinds of imported goods as a larger fraction of their consumption basket. So most economists agree that these tariffs would be highly regressive, i.e., hurt those at the bottom disproportionately. There are further effects that we will experience because it is possible, some say likely, that other countries will retaliate. They will impose taxes, tariffs on our goods. They will do it strategically. And if that happens, then of course we will be in the worst of all possible world. Demand for our goods will go down, and at the same time, prices will be going up. We will face a bout of stagflation. There are two more aspects of the depressing effects of the Trump policy on our economy. The first is debts and deficits. Like many a populist, he's promised tax cuts beyond any reasonable arithmetic. Some of the tax cuts, of course, will be financed by the tariffs. But the tariffs won't fill the hole that he promises. Independent analysis of his promises suggests that even taking account of the tariffs, there will be an increase of the debt of some $7 trillion over the next decade. The concern is, even if you don't believe that those deficits are a problem, many people around the world do. And that will lead to an increase in interest rates. And we're already beginning to see the increase in interest rates at the long end of the maturities. Markets realize that share the view that I've just said, that we're in for more inflation and more higher interest rates, and that belief will itself lead to higher interest rates, further slowing down the economy and further contributing to the housing shortages, further contributing to inflation. The final topic related to the American economy is the stock market. And there are two aspects of this. There's going to be, in effect, one is buoying up the stock market, are the tax cuts for corporations that I alluded to just a minute ago. But depressing the stock market will be the increased interest rates that almost surely will be associated with the inflation that his policies will bring about. I can't tell which of these two forces will win out. Over the long run, I believe that what is good for the country's economy is good for the stock market. And because I believe Trump's policies are not good for the country, they will be bad over the long run for the stock market. Now, everything I've said so far has been predicated on the idea that he actually carries out what he has promised. This may not happen. For instance, take the issue of tariffs. We saw in his first term, when he proposed tariffs, there were large carve-outs. And this is to be expected. Companies that depend enormously on imports, like Walmart, will come with their enormous political influence and try to say it will be devastating to us. And they will be right. Manufacturers who use imports from China will come and explain how devastating it will be. And there's a good chance they will convince the administration of that. And that will be especially so if they make the appropriate campaign contributions. I worry that while the carve-outs will soften the adverse impact that the tariffs would otherwise have on the economy, what will be opened up is the largest scale corruption in the United States since Andrew Jackson. We've already seen a lack of sensitivity to conflicts of interest, to ethical standards. And if one combines that lack of sensitivity to ethical standards with the new opportunities for corruption that these carve-outs will provide, one can only be worried about where this will go. Again, the tax cuts that he's promised, they may not occur. The deficit hawks in the Republican Party may not be able to close their eyes to the inconsistency of opening up huge new holes in the government's budget. We simply don't know. We can bet, however, that there will be massive tax cuts and there will be massive deficits, tax cuts for billionaires and corporations. But overall, I think the only thing that we really can be certain is that there will be uncertainty and chaos, just as we had in the first term. I now want to turn to the implications of these dramatic changes for other countries. The first I want to emphasize is that there will be the end of the kind of cooperation that is so essential for dealing with global problems like global warming, climate change, global pandemics. It will be a boost to dictators and a weakening of democracies, focusing more narrowly on economics. The higher interest rates will exacerbate the problems of debt that the world already faces. The final topic I want to talk about is the new Cold War. It's very clear that there is extensive hostility between the United States and China, and more broadly, the United States, China on one side, and China and Russia on the other. The concern of those caught in between, those in Latin America, those in Europe, those in other parts of Asia, often feel caught in between. They don't want to choose sides. And the question is, will they have to? And how do they navigate that? But going beyond that, there are two views about how this new Cold War will evolve. One is that Trump is much more transactional, obviously, than Biden. And that will make it easier to deal. He can compromise. It's all about money. And when it's only about money, there's always a deal that you can make. On the other hand, Trump brings to his Trump's perspective on the world is one of a zero-sum view of the world. Any other country does well, it must come at the expense of the United States. That kind of view makes reaching an agreement so much harder. There are many other dimensions of this dispute, of this new Cold War, that are going to affect Korea and other countries. For instance, China knows that Trump won't help Taiwan, and that might lead China to fulfill President Xi's ambition of uniting. The agreement that was made was a peaceful reunification, but China emphasizes unification over peaceful. Many of his advisors will know that many of Trump's advisors will know that we are still very interdependent. We depend on China for critical raw materials, and his actions could, if we take aggressive actions against China, he could correspondingly impose, you might say, economic pain on the United States. The question is, will he listen to his advisors? In his first term, he showed that he often did not. And as he's gotten older, he's gotten more irascible and more unpredictable. My own view is that looking at his record, the transactional perspective is likely to dominate. If that is the case, we may be able to muddle our way through the next 4 years, like we did the 4 years of Trump between 1917 and 2017 and 2020. But we have to recognize this time the risks are greater. This time there are likely to be multiple scars resulting from Trump's presidency. There are enormous challenges facing Korea, facing all the countries of the world, as the United States has made a historic election. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe, for great inspirational speech for us. Perhaps if time permits, could we talk about a few questions as a sort of follow-up of your presentation?
Sure, go ahead.
For not too long. But one question that comes to my mind is that obviously from Korea's perspective and many other countries exporting to the United States, this T word, the tariff, is a big concern for us. But toward the end of your presentation, I kind of sense that given the Mr. Trump's sort of transactional approach in many cases, perhaps this could be not as severe, hopefully, not as severe as promised during the campaign. Am I right on this interpretation?
Yes, in two ways. I mentioned at the beginning of my talk
Right.
that American firms that are corporations
right.
And
You did
donors
mention corruption too.
are going to make appeals, and many of those will be successful. So that's one side. And the other side is countries, Korea, possibly even China, will say, if you lower your tariff, we won't impose tariffs on our goods. So there'll be a negotiation. He loves negotiations. And we saw from the first term that his announcements are the beginning of a negotiation.
Okay.
And so where this will lead, one doesn't know. But I think in the end, it won't be as bad as his campaign says.
Okay.
But it will still be much worse than we are now.
Okay.
And the international rules-based trading order will be in shambles.
Okay.
And I think that's a very important point to realize what's happened to multilateralism and the rules-based system. You weren't supposed to have to negotiate every transaction, and we had what was called the most favored nation principle in trade. That's being put aside. That's being destroyed. So the whole architecture of trade of the last 70 years is being destroyed. People aren't talking about it, but it's being destroyed. And going back to a world before the most favored nation principle, not only before WTO, but before GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. So this is a big deal.
Mhm.
And as you say, the actual numbers may not be quite as disturbing.
Okay.
But
But
one more thing, let me just mention one more thing,
yeah.
which is part of the bind that he's in. He wants to finance the tax cuts for the billionaires and the corporations through the tariffs.
Right.
And if he
That's
doesn't
quite
have the
separate.
tariffs, the deficits soar.
Mm.
When I said before there's 7 trillion, if he
Mm.
doesn't get the tariff revenue, that
Much.
goes up even more. So
Yes.
he's sort of caught. And
Mm.
then his deficit hawks get
Mm.
even louder or look more foolish, and they will appeal to what is called dynamic scoring. It's all going to lead to more growth, but you can only do a limited amount of hocus pocus.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I take that point very productively in the sense that perhaps we should be ready to deal with the higher tide on tariff side, but at the same time, we should be vigilant to take some active dialogue with the United States counterparts for some possible compromise there. So thanks for your advice on that. Now, related question to this is that Biden administration had a very ambitious initiatives called IRA and CHIPS Acts. Following this programs, many countries around the world, Korea included, or some leading corporates decided to invest in the United States. This program is already underway, but there is some concern about whether if the campaign rhetoric prevails, then Mr. Trump may abolish this program. So this is a big concern for our country, and companies made investment already. Now, here also, do you see the scope of some sort of nuanced solution to this? Because I have a kind of a sense that actual beneficiaries of those programs in the United States, there are some red states like Texas and other states have already received benefits from foreign investment there and new jobs created. So what would you say to us?
Much of the discussion of IRA is that it was designed, or in effect was, Trump-proof, that much of the benefits went to red states. And it has been remarkably effective in generating investment and jobs in the red states. Now, here we have another conflict between venom on the one hand and politics on the other. The politics is very much, you would be foolish to get rid of a bill that affects your workers so much. But you have to remember the level of venom that Trump has against Biden. So it is conceivable that he will push for, as he said in the campaign, getting rid of IRA. I don't know which of these two will dominate. I think any reasonable politics would say politics wins. jobs win. But you're dealing now not with a reasonable person. So I can't reason about what an unreasonable person is going to do. I can say there are many cases where he does something that is politically unreasonable. So I think your companies should continue to be worried. I should mention one more element of that I didn't highlight. I talked about inflation.
Mm.
The IRA has the name Inflation Reduction Act because it was intended to reduce inflation. It reduced inflation in two ways. One, by enhancing the supply of low-cost renewables, it will get our energy prices down. The IRA would let those prices go up and would again be inflationary. So another dimension that worries me about the repeal is the inflationary consequences. Finally, if there were a repeal, it would be such a major step back from, it was the only step forward that America was really doing in addressing climate change. Korea has been really one of the leaders in climate change, and you have a hydrogen policy. You've actually been trying to deal with climate change. U.S. had not been doing very much because of our fossil fuel lobby. So IRA is really important for the U.S. And a repeal would be such a setback. It would be a heartbreaking. And when I say heartbreaking, it would be heartbreaking not only for me as an economist, as somebody involved in the climate battle, but for our young people who see this as one of the key areas, and they are very unhappy that they're inheriting an earth that is burning up.
But perhaps this may be a last question, given the time constraint. You did mention something about this geopolitical sort of aspect of this whole thing in East Asia. I said also you mentioned Taiwan-China relations, which could be a very serious flashpoint, but there may be a solution, compromise solution could be on the way. Now, as of yesterday, we hear news about the likely appointment of foreign policy, staff like Marco Rubio is likely to be the Secretary of State, and Security Advisor Mike Waltz. They are both Florida. Apparently, Mr. Trump likes people from Florida now, where he resides. Now, those two top foreign, diplomatic policy leaders are considered as China hawks. They're very hardliners against China. Now, what does this mean? I mean, is that greater tension or conflicts expected between these G2 countries, or perhaps this may be a way of having better position in the trade, in negotiation for or a better deal around Taiwan Strait or in China also?
Well,
what is your thought on this?
Yeah. So first, let me say everything with Trump is transactional, including security. And so you might say everything's on the bargaining table. So I don't want to take anything off. What I do worry is that there are many, many dimensions to the tension between the United States and China. And many ways in which they interact. It's not just the trade in apparel or appliances. One of the things that the United States has taken very aggressive actions has to do with computer chips and the sale of technology, and the use of Chinese technology by other countries. It's told other countries, if you use Huawei or other Chinese products, can't be interconnected with our products. It's been a real strong action, not only trying to discourage them, but really taking actions that make it very difficult for them to buy Chinese products and get access to advanced technology. Now, some of these sanctions have accelerated China's own program of research and development. And, we have to recognize that China has more engineers, better planning, real foresight. It saw the problem of the need for green, and it began, it's been having an agenda since 1980 of modernization. It has now a lot of money in the bank, you might say. And all of those give it some advantages in terms of developing the advanced chips. We still are, and advantages in AI. We're still ahead, but we have to recognize that it will be working very hard to close the gap. And so that's the first aspect of this, that I think we may have overestimated our competitive advantage. And by taking such strong actions, we're accelerating China's efforts to be restore, you might say, more fully its economic sovereignty. Secondly, I mentioned in my talk that China really dominates in a whole host of natural what are called rare earths, but they're not but scarce minerals, and we can eventually develop them, but that's not going to happen overnight. And so an expansion of hostilities of this form, China has been very reluctant to take retaliatory action. And a little bit in 2 or 3 other minerals. I don't know if you've been following that restricted exports to the United States on 2 or 3 of the critical minerals. It could take stronger actions. It may be a violation of WTO, but so is everything else going on in this world. So all of that would really worsen economic relations between the United States and China, would force other countries in a more, as I see the problem, as those two move further apart, it puts the other countries in a more difficult position. I can't tell you how this is going to play out. My own view that I expressed in my talk was that rational individuals would recognize our interdependence and our need to cooperate in a whole host of areas, and therefore try to dampen the hostility, make sure it focused on things that we really care about, I think human rights and democracy, but not try to make it as expansive. But as I said before, I'm not sure that Trump is rational. I'm not sure that his advisors are fully apprised of the nature of the interdependencies and the potential consequences. Like war hawks in any war, they often go to war without thinking about the second and third round of how things could play out and the downside risks. So, quite frankly, I'm worried.
Okay, thank you very much. I think time has run out, so I would like to say thank you once again for being with us today. As you promised, next time will be in person meeting.
So,
Okay.
okay.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and take
Thank
care
you.
of yourself. Okay.
Okay,
Bye now.
thank you. Thank you.
Okay.